Hi there, and thank you for clicking on my video. We're going to be covering Kullervo for a bit. Relatively new frame, came out a couple weeks ago. Going to be talking about a basic build and a little bit more advanced. If you're looking for a level cap build, you're basically looking at protective dash and rolling guard to keep him alive as of right now. Now that we know what the buff that is impending is, his survivability should be significantly better. Reason being is the buff that they've said they're going to give him is a quarter-second shield gate on overguard. So pretty nice. Kind of wonder how that's going to work out with circuit decrees. Could be kind of busted. Especially on something like Equinox having double shield gate and whatnot. But anyway, back to this frame. Super interesting frame. Let's go over his abilities really quick. He's not too complicated. The thing we're mostly going to be talking about is his interactions, because some of his stuff is actually pretty interesting. Passive is 75% heavy attack efficiency, which is super nice. And 100% attack wind-up speed on all melee weapons. Definitely going to be taking advantage of this. One is Wraithful Advance. It's basically a teleport. It does have a tap and a hold, but if you tap when focused on an enemy, you will basically teleport right in front of them and heavy attack. The wind up, and this is one of the things that's not mentioned, the wind up on your heavy attack when you're using his one does give iframes. Which is kind of nice, because you can use it to time larger hits, say like the Eximus like straight line grenade, if you will, which is the thing right now that tends to be one-shotting Kullervo the most. Flat crit chance is something you also get based on scales of power strength, and the melee crit chance is a flat buff that lasts for a scaling duration, though, to be honest, the duration isn't too big of a deal because you're basically going to be spamming this ability. Drain is 25, obviously going to work on efficiency for that, and the range is affected by range mods. You can see all the stuff turn green, right? The melee crit chance is flat, and it scales additively with what is on your weapon, so if you have a weapon that innately has 20 crit chance, for example, the build that I have on right now, the New Bro build, gives 280 crit chance that will add to the crit chance that is on the weapon, plus whatever crit chance modifiers you have. And it will give you, say, 300 if it's unmodded and the weapon has 20 base crit chance. Pretty simple. Super nice, though. Also, the damage from this, like with your heavy attack, does scale with your combo multiplier, because you'll be able to teleport around, and the damage you deal by using this ability, because you're performing a heavy attack, combo counter is going to be super important later. Two, it gives you overguard while giving you a homing dagger AoE. That is 10 daggers, doesn't scale with strength, doesn't scale with any stat, so it's always 10. The radius is kind of a misnomer. The homing range is actually a kind of far on this, but the radius does affect the homing range and sort of how fast you can, because you only gain overguard when the daggers hit something. The further the range is, the more likely you are to target stuff. So if you dump stat range, you're going to have to get in something's face in order for the daggers to trigger and hit something. So you need a little bit of range for this ability, but you don't need a ton. Deals okay slash damage, does give you a slash tick. Also provides on when it hits, gives you health regen, or not health regen, health recovery. So this ability has 10 daggers. Right now with my current power strength, which is just an intensify and a strength shard, for every dagger that hits, I will get 280 health back. And if it goes over my health, I will gain overguard, provided it hits an enemy. But if it doesn't hit anything, it will then take 49 damage. Now, losing health isn't going to be that big of a deal. If you're using Kullervo somewhat actively and you're running around, and even if you have like a basic stretch, you're going to be able to just, at a minimum, gain enough shield, overguard, or health to compensate getting hit once or twice. Worst case scenario. The third one is, they might actually tune this, but as of right now, it's kind of busted. It's a massive multiplier to damage. Kullervo sends forth a curse that binds enemies. When a cursed enemy takes damage from him, every other cursed enemy also suffers a portion of that damage. Oh, and the 2 recompense also provides combo counter. Not a lot, but mods affect it. So you can end up getting, I think, like 32 combo count from just casting your 2. So you're going to be spamming it, you know. So it's going to be pretty nice considering, you know, the heavy attack efficiency and whatnot. Okay, his 3, Collective Curse, sends forth a wave. It's got a really nice angle to it. It's not really... It's like a wave that is in all 3 directions. So it has a vertical component and horizontal. So you can hit enemies if you have a big enough wave on, say, like 2 floors, so like above and below you, but it does have an angle associated with it. Pretty easy to see. So it's up to here, cast it again, over to here, over to here, and it's traveling through the floor. So everything in that area is getting hit by the wave, and it tethers the enemies together. And any damage that you deal to any of those enemies is dealt in to all the other enemies. So if you, say, have like a sniper, or what's going to be the most common case, like a melee weapon, and you hit one enemy, it's going to transfer that to all of the other enemies. So if you have like an AoE weapon, it's going to hit, say you have an AoE weapon and you throw your 3 out and you tag 10 enemies. When you shoot it with an AoE weapon and it hits all of them, well, all of the enemies are going to take like 10 times damage, right? So it's pretty nice. Can sort of give combo count when used in combination with the 4. This ability is going to be something that you're also going to be spamming almost as often as the 1. So we are going to be working with efficiency on this. 1, 2, and 3 are going to be his main spammable abilities. But his final one, Storm of Ukko, is really, really strong when combined with this 3, because the 3 spreads damage out to all the enemies that are tethered, while Storm of Ukko is a ground AoE. Costs 100 energy, but because of the efficiency that we have, costs 70. The radius is moddable. Duration is extendable with mods. Damage per second isn't too fantastic considering it's a 4 ability, but because of its synergy, it's super nice. So 3,500 slash damage, and a status effect. But with this ability, the slash ticks cap at 12. And also one of the other things, and I'll just show the interaction. So this is the 4, Storm of Ukko. You can see there's a small percentage, it's not every time, because some of these guys aren't moving. But eventually, there is a chance for all of them to get a stagger. So this is a bit of CC as well. So when you're playing, you can use it to, like, clog up a corridor or something like that. But the main interaction with this is that when you combine, you use the 3, the damage gets multiplied, and it's pretty nasty. Because obviously everything's getting multiplied by the number of enemies that are tethered. So if there's 20 enemies that are tethered, each of the enemies are basically taking 20 times damage. Obviously gets boosted with viral on the initial hit. It doesn't multiply again on transmitted damage. So say you hit an enemy for 100 damage, and the viral bonus, or the viral status is at 10, it'll boost the damage up to 425, and then all of the enemies from that single source of damage will take 425. So you can amp this actually pretty quickly, especially when you start dealing with like condition overload and stuff like that. The damage gets pretty nutty. So let's talk about the other one. The other source, so the 4 and the 3, in terms of CC, are going to be your main source of survival. You can see there's a flinch that occurs, and it's similar to the 4, where you can see them getting knocked around. That flinch, that little bit of CC that provides, is going to be enough most of the time for you to jump in and just kill everybody. So, because of the damage getting spread out, you're obviously going to want, on melee builds, you're going to min-max for as much damage as possible on your initial hit, or maybe throw a little bit of range on to hit 2 enemies at once as hard as possible. So you can just tap 1 once and just kill everything. But your combo, more or less... Oh, and let's go over your survivability, because this is going to be a big one. Kullervo, until you get into like higher level Steel Path, or say like Circuit, where you regularly interact with higher level enemies, Kullervo is honestly, for like regular star chart missions, kind of immortal. But his main source of survivability is going to be casting his 2, little bit of CC, and these guys are 195s on Steel Path, if it matters. But he honestly doesn't need too much until you get to a higher level, provided you have energy efficiency, or your energy economy is pretty tuned down. But if you're right next to the enemies, here's how long the cast is or here's how long it takes to recover your overguard. Just that quick. There's a little bit of a wind-up time you can see, and then they just go. So it's not an instant overguard, but it is damn quick. So if you're trying to time it, and you're taking enemy fire, if you will, provided you don't get one shot, which is going to be an issue. But provided you don't get one shot, you want to cast when you're taking enemy fire right before you run out of overguard, so you'll regain, or so you'll go into your health pool. And we are going to be running Rage or Hunter Adrenaline, whichever one you have. Preferably Hunter Adrenaline. So you can recover a bit of energy, and then you can recover back into overguard. Right? So there's no cooldown, really. It doesn't make you recover, or it doesn't make the daggers go out like one at a time. They all go out, they got that slight delay, and then they just hit. And that's more or less it. So the main combination for like staying alive is, it's not too much of a big brain take, is the 2 is an instant cast. So like I can hit 1 and 2 at the same time, and it doesn't interrupt. Let me get more enemies. So your main combo is going to be 3, and then 1 and 2 together. Not that I have any combo But that's going to be your main combo for like getting in and out of situations, because the CC from the 3 will cover you sort of entering into the enemy area. But one of the other ways you could sort of cover your ass is when I'm doing survivals with them. I haven't gotten too high with them, but I got up to just under 400 Steel Path Mott, which is for a face tank build on a frame that doesn't have innate damage reduction. That's not bad. Obviously, that's not going to hold up to the longer circuit runs or people that love doing like disruptions or whatnot, where you're going to be going into the thousands, because obviously the health's nerfed, but not the damage. But one of the things that does help, and it's part of the issue with the overguard, is there is sort of a technique to deal with the overguard. And it basically involves either doing enough damage to kill them. I know, big brain take. Or just fucking ignoring them. So let's load up some enemies with some overguard and we'll look at the interaction. Orokin. Let's do 5 of these. And 5 of these, easy enough. And we'll get rid of the pet. So no bonus damage. And just right now, I'm using the new bro build. Very basic. Not a lot of mods. Frankly, still does Steel Path, so not too much to care about. The new bro Ceramic Dagger does Steel Path just fine. Pressure Point, Fury, Killing Blow. Smite Corrupted. Might not have that. Organ Shatter. Shocking Touch, Fever Strike for Corrosive, and Reach. So if you don't have Smite Corrupted, just throw on another element. Heat is pretty solid, so do like Corrosive Heat. This is fine too. Because frankly, it's just going to be more of an issue with having the multipliers or not. Okay, so let's go over his 3. Actually, let me get more energy. So one of the cool things about his 3, and if you decide to use the mecha set with him, this is going to be how you keep the dot alive. Because the dot gets out of control super fast because of his 3. But his 3, obviously you cast it. You have a slash dot, right? But as long as the dot's ticking, you can move it around a little bit. Is now the mecha set target needs to be the one with the dot on it, but this enemy is going to die first, and it will then transfer the dots to everything else, and it will just instantly nuke. But okay, so let's talk about one of the issues with overguard and how we're going to deal with it. Because overguard, these guys are going to be what kills you. Because these have the grenades that come out front and the what is it, the volatile. But the issue is this interaction. Okay, let me see if I can do this without stabbing the other guy. Nope, failed. Hold on, let me get rid of him. Enemies with overguard, if you put a dot onto them, do not spread the damage. Only if they take damage to shields and to their health pool. So everything's tethered. I hit one of these guys. Hold on. Okay, this guy I hit, but see how everything's tethered? And only these guys were taking the damage. These didn't take any slash ticks. Yeah, I keep hitting that guy. But see how it's not on any of the others? It's because of the overguard. But if you go the other way, now everything's taking damage. Because obviously, because the damage is being transferred through an ability. So, one of the things with Kullervo that's going to be an issue when you're playing him is it is actually really beneficial to find the weakest enemy and hit that. Because, say these guys have alloy and these have ferret, right? And I'm modded for corrosive. I received no damage bonus against alloy besides getting like 10 stacks of corrosive on it, right? And the armor shred. But I don't receive my plus 75 against alloy armor. But I receive it against ferrite armor. Well, if I hit an enemy with ferrite armor and it does like 100,000 damage, where if I were to hit an alloy enemy, or an enemy with alloy armor, and I were to hit like 1k, this ability transfers the damage as true damage, essentially. Now, there's a little bit of nuance with it, not a lot. And it has to do with the overguard going into health. If you haven't seen that, check out that video. It's a weird interaction. I haven't nailed it down. So I actually want to nail down the weakest enemy. So 27, 29, 1900. It's transferring the damage. All right, I'm going to pick an enemy that has ferrite. Let's find a Grineer unit. All right, this guy has ferrite. All right, we got our little volunteer right here in the center. We're going to tether him up again. And remember, we were doing like 2700, 1900. The initial hit was 250 because he died. And then the dot transferred. Let me try to get a better one. Alright, a more robust volunteer with ferrite. Alright, so 1719, 1586. It transfers the damage 1-to-1. Even though I didn't hit those guys, my damage changed where when I hit these guys, it was dealing a different value. So it depends on the enemy that you mod against. So when this frame has a lot of issues in terms of like getting the most out of its damage, just on the same level, your damage can vary wildly. So you actually want to try to find the enemy that you're modded specifically for. So where normally you would have to like give some sort of respect for the Eximus units, on this frame, I have done way better modding specifically for the trash mobs and just using that damage boost to nuke the Eximus. Because one of the things is that if you're not dealing damage, like say you jump onto the Eximus and he still has overguard up, well, he's not going to deal any damage to the shit around you. The stuff around you only has that long of a CC before it starts shooting you again, and then it resets, right? Well, he's not gonna stop shooting you, and especially if it's a bombard, he's throwing out that little missile, right? That slow-moving missile. But if you jump into his face, it might as well be an instant hit. So when you're trying to kill these guys, find the weak enemy, and it'll be way easier to kill them. So that's sort of the nuance with this 3. You can use it and watch the combo count. This is his combo counter down here. We're going to cast 4. Combo count goes up super fast. And even on this little ceramic dagger that I got, that is not an Incarnon, the damage is kind of substantial. Not pretty substantial. Obviously, the Incarnon would do way better. But even with as little power strength as I got, if I cast my 3 in combination with that, the slash ticks will multiply the damage and will essentially kill most things most of the time, frankly. Even when I was doing that slightly longer run, it was like 2 hours on Mont. The 4 and 3 combo alone were still able to kill stuff. Even when I was using the mecha set, you would just kill stuff. Make sure to target the mecha enemy or the mecha targeted enemy. Drop a 4 over them, throw a 3. You got a 30-meter bomb, brewing up, right? So it's the interaction between the abilities that really allows him to amp his damage a ton. Now, Kullervo does have some special modding with respect to his melee. You do not put crit chance on a melee for him because he gets flat crit chance from his 1. So right now with my power strength, I'm at like 140 or something like that. Whatever your power strength is, you basically double it, and that gives you the flat crit chance, right? So if you have 300 power strength, you have 600 flat crit. Would be nice, right? So look out for that in like an arbitration or something. So the only thing we're going to be doing is basically modding for everything but crit. Even though it's going to be heavy attacks, there's a couple of different ways to change up your modding setup. Reach is eventually going to go away, but if you're a new bro, listen, man, if you're a new bro, you got to do what you got to do. But here's the general gist. Let me get this lined up. Okay, good enough. All right, so you have base damage, crit damage, attack speed, faction damage, reach, a big weighting on whatever element gives you plus 75 to the enemies you're fighting. So this is going to be magnetic for Corpus, gas for infested, corrosive for Grenier. And on corrupted, you can either pick magnetic and just make sure to target the Corpus variant, the Corpus guards, right? Or do corrosive and make sure to target the converted Grenier, right? So just a little bit of a play style change. Reach is eventually going to go away. We're going to replace it with another crit mod. But for now, because your multipliers are so low, because your modding variety is so low, literally just get damage on it. The number you want as high as possible is when you go to the heavy attack. This damage number down here. Don't bother doing IPS. I mean, I guess you could. But frankly, it would just be better to do the element, because IPS isn't going to give you plus 75. The 2 element mods will. If you're missing one of these, just go with like a heat against Grenier, against corrupted. You could do corrosive heat also, and then target the Grenier units that are corrupted, or do magnetic toxin if you wanted, and then target the Corpus units, because the damage transfers 1-to-1. The damage will, be amped appropriately, and you're just trying to one-shot everything, basically. One of the ways you can get a dot on here, without having to worry about status chance, is to take, and most of these builds are going to be taking advantage of this fact, stances, and I can't cover them all on this video, But for the new players, some stances have forced procs on it, whether it's like an impact. I can't think of any stances that have a forced puncture. I don't think there are any. But it might be like a forced impact, a forced slash, a forced lift, or a forced knockdown. The one you're going to be looking for is stances with forced slash procs. And the reason being is we're going to mod this weapon for as much raw damage as we can to get the raw damage when we hit something as high as possible. But we're also going to try to force a dot and boost the dot damage, which is only going to be influenced. Most of the stuff isn't going to mess with the dot damage, but these 4 at the top will. Pressure point, organ shatter, faction damage, and killing blow, because it boosts the base, are going to increase the heavy attack dot. And then we're going to try to multiply it with elements also, but that's not going to affect the dot. So we're trying to get the best of the both worlds, but the main philosophy behind this doesn't change. The mods are going to change, but the idea of what each mod spot does isn't. So this is the main philosophy. That's your element combination for each faction. Change out your faction mod if you do decide to go it. If you don't want to mess around with the faction mod, like say you want to do this, then you would do like a heat against Grenier. And this would be okay as like a general use. Like corrosive heat isn't the worst thing. Obviously you'd want magnetic against Corpus, but this guy does so much damage, especially if you're on the regular star chart and for whatever reason you farmed this guy up or swiped. This would be the go-to way to get it. Alright. So, we've covered the basic Nubro build. Let's talk about the mods, because there is a bit of a philosophy behind it. For your build, if you are new, you are going to slot steel fiber here. But for the time being, I'm going to run without it. If you notice, it goes 950 to 1370. The reason why I'm not running it is because I have something called an armor shard, and it's giving me 300. Well, I can't take off 50 to make it exact. But the steel fiber is 350, give or take. So 2 armor shards is basically what a steel fiber is going to be. So just imagine steel fiber right here. The aura mod, frankly, is going to be whatever you can get your hands on. I think it's a dash polarity innate. And there's 2 really good choices. Energy siphon, which I think is a nightwave. And loot radar. Or not loot radar, enemy radar. Are super nice. Though, to be honest, if you're new, you probably want to go just energy siphon, just to get that little bit of passive regen, because your shields basically at the beginning, if you decided to swipe for this guy or you're still on the star chart, frankly, as soon as you get 5k shields, you're not proccing rage ever again. So it's going to be more important to get the energy regen. So go with this one. But equilibrium, health orbs give you a bit of energy. Energy orbs give you a bit of health, just to ease up the ammo or the energy economy and give you a little bit of additional, health recovery. Not that you really need it with this frame. Flow, rage is the sort of bread and butter that allows the super cheap build to even function. Like, we can even take off the aura. As you take health damage, you will generate energy, and because his energy pool is 450, this mod has a 40% conversion ratio, so for every 100 health you lose, you gain 40 energy. Well, I can completely recover my energy pool before losing all of my health, and because I regen health so efficiently, with the 2, I can spam this and lose like half my health bar and then completely recover my health bar and then go a bit into overs. So it's pretty efficient. If you have Hunter Adrenaline, might as well go put this on here. It just makes the process more efficient. This is not worth buying for plat though. So if you have rage, that's fine. Just go ahead and use that. Stretch, pretty simple. We have a bunch of AoE abilities. Every single one is affected by AoE. And more importantly, our main damage multiplier on this frame isn't going to be Wraithful Advance, our 1, even though that is our instance of damage. But the thing that multiplies our damage is how many enemies we can hit with our 3. So we have a big multiplier on our 3. So if I can hit an entire room before I enter it, because this will sort of go through walls. It's really fuzzy, but you can like get around corners depending on how you aim. But if I can tag everything with the 3 and hit the first enemy that walks around the corner with enough damage that it one-shots it, and it deals more damage than anything that got tags has, the room blows up. So this is our main multiplier. So for most of the builds, we're going to be running double range. I tried this frame with like max range, and it's decent. It's a bit of a meme though, but I just don't like running. I just don't like being that dependent on health tanking, especially at higher levels. And the 4 doesn't have enough range to where you can lock down like a bigger room, because the radius is kind of small for something that you want to like CC everything. Like this damn sure ain't no Bastille, right? So it's pretty decent, but this is our main multiplier. This is also a multiplier, so these interact together. So we have range, so we can increase how much damage we do with Intensify, and then transfer that damage as much as possible. This ability, the 3, is also affected by power strength. Ideally, you want to get this to 200. So the damage redirection is 100%. That being said, if you're at like 190 and you're hitting something for 10 mil, whatever you attached or whatever you group together or link together with his 3, if you hit something for 10 mil and a bunch of stuff is linked together, essentially everything is dead. Like even if you had like 50% damage redirection, the rest of that shit's dead. There aren't too many things that have that much health still in the game. I think Demolus on Steel Path might have that much in terms of like actual health, not like EHP. There's a bunch of stuff that has higher EHP, but since we're transmitting damage through true damage, it's actually what is the health pool. So you can get the damage high enough on your 1 that even with a little bit of damage redirection, if you take a couple hits on a lower percentage, if you deal enough damage with your 1 and your heavy attack, you can go down to 90% and it's not going to kill you. But obviously you don't want to run, negative strength. So all 4 of these abilities are buffed by range. The next one, Intensify. All 4 abilities need strength, so we kind of need some form of strength on here. With the other builds, we're going to come back and basically change what way we're getting it back on. But for now, Nubro build, ability strength. The strength, I have 140% strength, 30 from Intensify, 10 from a shard. So basically assume 130 right now. But double it, gives you 280. There's 10% on the dagger. So when I heavy attack something, my effective crit chance is 290. Easy enough. Recompense increases how much health you get back. Also how much health you get hit with strength. Also increases the damage of the daggers. So, provided you can get rid of your daggers, there's no downside of, running a ton of strength. Though it is kind of a meme that you can almost kill yourself. So Collective Curse, good enough. Streamline, this is a very, very cast-heavy frame. Interacts positively with flow in terms of like energy economy. Just so we can spam a little bit more, but for this build, you can even do Steel Path with this. You're not going to last long. Those Eximus, if you get hit by one of those grenades, the grenades that travel along the floor, you're still going to get one shot, but I've taken this to 30 minutes on Conjunction Survival. It's fine. Obviously, just stay airborne a little bit, especially when you're dealing with those Eximus, or until you get your 3 lockdown. Or until you get the recompense tagged to everything. Sorry, Collective Curse. Until you get everything linked together, it's kind of smart to just stay in the air for a little bit. Because those volatile Eximus, when they drop that shit on the ground, it does have a bit of height to it, but if you're like actually up in the air, they can't hit you. So that helps a lot. But pretty basic, and Vitality is just to increase, obviously, our protect against the one shot, which this frame is a bit of an issue with, but also to give more health for rage to gain energy off of. So immediate, if depending on how far you are in the game, some immediate upgrades. Obviously, it's just changing out exactly what they do is an immediate upgrade. Double range would be Augur Reach. And if you have... Let me look it up. Energy Siphon. For the new bro, this would be your build. Then you would go to Corrosive Projection. And depending on your arcane setup, you could also go Steel Charge. Because Steel Charge ends up being a really, really strong option. But that being said, since we're so dependent on raw damage, Corrosive Projection kind of ends up being the aura you have to replace against the Grineer. Like, this is just the default, right? Since we can't use Brief or Spite, this literally does nothing. But Corrosive Projection is sort of the mod that you need a reason to remove. But if you know you have a strong enough build, Steel Charge is just gravy. So this is up to you. Corrosive Projection is going to help with the alloy armor, though. So I would say for a more general bonus, use this if you're running a corrosive build. But that's personal preference. These are obviously interchangeable. So this would be like an immediate upgrade as you go through the star chart. Equilibrium is a sizable energy economy increase, and for most frames, though this one really doesn't need it, because we're going to be really dependent on health to generate our energy for us. Having those energy orbs and health orbs that we do pick up count for more means we have to rely less on rage or hunter adrenaline. So it's not a big brain strat. It's literally just changing the mods out. Intensify, if you get far enough along, you probably have a better mod setup than this. You can easily apply Archon Intensify also. Normally, I would say Archon Intensify is on like a pretty niche setup, where you would need to run like Combat Discipline to regularly prime this. But because his overguard is so squishy, you are regularly going into your health pool. So when you cast your 2 and you're in your health pool, like the overguard is gone from like a single hit or something, you're going to proc this regularly. And it has a duration, 10 seconds. Means you're going to get a couple of casts out of it. And this will help boost the strength up more. So it'll boost it up to 180, which means our crit chance bonus is going to be 360. So plus 10 on the dagger, it's going to be 370. It's going to be tier 2 reds. So starting to have a good time, right? But the philosophy is pretty simple. Increase the range so we can link more enemies with the curse. The strength goes up. Oh, and also the strength numbers. If you really want to mess around and like min-max this, the numbers that you need to hit for strength, the 4 doesn't have one. It's literally a kill time issue because of how strong each individual slash dot is, because it's always going to be maxed to 12 slash dots, right? So the damage per second is literally, it does go up, but in terms of like, oh, I need to hit like 300 power strength, it doesn't have anything like that. It scales off of strength, range, duration. Hot take, it's an ability. Same with 3. Actually with all of them. So when you're interacting with Collective Curse and Uko, you want to make sure that Collective Curse, if you really want to max this, needs 200 strength. That's where damage redirection becomes 100%, and it doesn't go over. Okay. Recompense, I think, needs 225 to give you max overguard. But to be honest, because this ability is spammed so much, if you're a little short, I haven't felt like I've needed 5k overguard every single time. Obviously, if you go more strength, you can get more, so you can heal more of your health pool. Because one of the builds that I have, the tank build that actually did like 400 SP as like a face tank, is a Grace Blessing build. So maybe on that, I could justify running significantly more power strength because I have so much more health to heal into. But you can either mod for twice as much power strength, or you can cast the fucking ability twice. You know what I'm saying? So it's just 225 if you want 5k to equal the overguard. But I wouldn't bother maxing this. Or is it 250? Hold on, I'll check real quick. Okay, 250. Let's get that back on there. Okay, and the other one is the big deal where on the 1 is you want to make sure, and it depends on the weapon, I would say it's easily worthwhile to guarantee that you get reds. It's absolutely worthwhile to do reds. But mathematically, it starts to fall off a bit after tier 4 crits. If you can go from like tier 4 to tier 6 crits, well, that's really fucking good. So like during like a Fisher buff or something, that would be pretty dank. But you want to make sure at an absolute minimum, you're at least like where I'm at now. Like 130 strength is okay, so you can get the reds, but you got to make sure whatever the base crit on your weapon is, plus the melee crit chance you get from this, is 300. So you're always dealing with reds. And at least if you're midway into red crits, so you can get the second tier. It's a nice little bonus, but it's not, unless you're doing like a dot build and raw build, it's still pretty nice, but especially with dot builds, they really do like crit tiers. But it does start to fall off a little bit. You want to start to go for a different multiplier. Now, obviously with this, if you want to do like a blind rage, you certainly can, but I would limit whatever modding setup you're doing to 1 mod or 2 giving you strength, and maybe an augmented arcane. if you want to really jump into this, but don't be equipping 4 strength mods and like two strength arcanes trying to get this damage up. You're going to nerf your build to the point where you're just going to die, and it will be an entire skill issue on how well you can dodge and rely off of protective dash and rolling guard. We want a little bit of survivability on him, just enough so we can get our damage off. So anyway, basic build, been upgraded a little bit. This is a more generic build. It's still the same philosophy that we had before. We've changed out our mods, and we have leaned way further into survivability than we probably should have. That being said, this does Steel Path no fucking problem. Literally just one-shots everything. It has enough strength to where you can regularly recover your health. It has enough damage reduction, not just from adaptation, to make the health pool nice and chunky. Even as the Steel Charge, Equilibrium's maxed out, Prime Flow, same thing with before, Archon Intensify, but the main difference is we still have Vitality, Hunter Adrenaline, so these 6 mods have stayed the same, but the big difference is we're not running any duration, we don't have any efficiency, we are surviving off of our health tank. So we have gone for a mod, and this is going to be more Steel Path oriented. Health conversion is pretty damn easy to get on this frame, especially with a Panzer. Health conversion is super easy to keep up, and this is like 1300 armor, like 1350. So on top of 950, this is 1350, so it puts us over 2k, which is really strong damage reduction from just armor. And then we had adaptation on top of it, and then blessing and grace. If you don't have grace, you can also do reconstruct. You're going to need to spam it, though. And there's also Reaper, which I don't have a maxed out one. Once I get it maxed out, I'll probably end up putting that on here. But grace, I need to get blessing stacks. And this does just fine. I've done 1.5 hours, 2 hours on Steel Path with this, and you're still one-shotting shit. It just depends on your weapon. Where before, if you would do like 200% power strength, you could rely on the crit tiers more. With this setup, it's leaned so far into survivability that, frankly, I should probably take like Vitality off and go double range. But I can guarantee that this will get you to like 1.5 hours Steel Path, no problem. And even the Volatile Eximus, this will survive that charge that it shoots out. The grenades that go off in this frame, or in front of it on the ground, this will face tank that. So that's the big issue. That's why I made this so you're not getting one shot so damn easily. So for general mission running on Steel Path, this does Mott to 1.5 hours. It could have gone further. I wasn't getting killed. And I've taken this to 1 hour and change on Conjunction Survival. So you can get a couple rotation Cs. It's nice and relaxing, and there's still enough range to actually, not die instantly. If you want to maybe change the build up, adaptation is not super effective on this. You could go double range or even swap out for rolling guard. The philosophy that I was building this behind is that none of this shit actually affects overguard. What I wanted was a wall of damage reduction on the health. So overguard would constantly be getting just destroyed. Because obviously as the enemies do more damage, right, the overguard will be eaten away faster and faster. But when the armor, or when the health pool gets hit, I need as much damage reduction to literally just prevent getting one shot. So when you get hit, health conversion is going to lose a stack. You can keep adaptation up a little bit, and it'll help a bit with the status effects if you're dealing with like infested and whatnot. Maybe it's a little more important there, because adaptation is way more effective against the infested. But health conversion's the big one. You can change out adaptation if you want. for like a rolling guard or double range, and that's up to you. But I've really gotten an appreciation for health conversion on this. It prevents most of the one shots because you're going to be in your overguard so much. Taking damage on your overguard doesn't get rid of your health conversion stacks, so they are just 3 stacks waiting, little over 2,000 armor, waiting on the health pool. So if something punches through the overguard, like you can't keep it up, there's a ton of damage reduction waiting on that damage to get punched through that health pool. And that's sort of the philosophy behind this build, is keeping that damage reduction up. So when the overguard goes away, there's enough of a tank sitting there to prevent the one shot, because this frame doesn't have shield gate. Now, that being said, the new overguard gate, or whatever the hell they're going to call it, is going to be a quarter of a second. And if they change the 2, I hope they don't. Because if there's any sort of a timer that they change on the acquisition on the 2, Kullervo can be like absolutely broken, like whole ass broken, really quick. But as of right now, all of the daggers are homing at the same time. If they even make it so it's like 2 daggers at a time, really quick, it's basically a better shield gate. So it depends. You're still mostly surviving off of his 3, that little bit of CC, and literally just killing the enemy before it can interact. So it depends on what you're doing. I was doing conjunction survival, and I didn't really want the range too much because of like where I was moving around. I wasn't really staying in the big rooms. If you are using a bigger room, change your build for more range. There's nothing wrong with that. Depending on how you want to play. But I was mostly running around, and I wanted to stay mobile, and I wanted to, for whatever reason, I was going through the tunnels, and this worked because I only need to get to the end of the tunnel. I don't need to cover a large area. So it was just more area specific. Sorry, on Tavuni. But say on the conjunction survival, I could imagine if you're staying in some of the bigger rooms, running more range. So you can make it like, if there's that big circular room, right, with the 4 entrances that sort of come down, and like the one sort of tunnel, I could see more range being run there. So you can get further up the walkways or down the tunnel to keep your kill rate up. But that being said, where I was at, this worked just fine. But changing the range and changing the build slightly depending on the tile that you're doing, it's why the configs are there. So this worked for what I was doing. Adaptation can go to rolling guard, though. Especially at higher levels, adaptation does absolutely nothing. And to be honest, health conversion would eventually do nothing also. Like, you should just get used to doing, if you want to do a level cap with Kullervo, you're actually just way better off doing rolling guards than Urk. Just being honest. I did come up with sort of a bullshit meme build. It works. And it's essentially cheating. I don't even like it, but you know, I did mod. It was 2 hours, no issues. It's very repetitive gameplay. But I was using Defy to fix his iframes, and it basically makes him immortal. Honestly, those of you that remember the old Defy build, it's basically that with a heavy attack thrown in, and rolling guard to make the heavy attack full iframes. You use Defy, obviously gives you armor, which is whatever. 500 armor is really good at lower levels. 500 armor at, against 1,000 steel path isn't anything. But it is a nice armor stack. So it is a little bit of a cope build, but because you have your combos stacked up so much, this can be really, really nice. And it helps deal with overguard. And let me show you the main reason behind this build. It's complete cope. Oh. And now none of them have overguard. And if I cast again, everything's CC'd. So as the enemy gets stronger, I can jump in, cast my 3, tether everything. It's 1 instance of damage, sadly. So you have the, it's 2 instances of damage. It's 1 from the link and 1 dealt to the enemy. So you can see 2. So there's no multiplier from hitting like 30 enemies at once, right? So it doubles your damage a little bit. Not great. But it is what it is. But this gives you full iframes. Combined with the heavy attack. And let me use a slower one, because you practically can't see it with daggers. Let me make sure I don't have any wind up. So it's a bit of a meme, but if you've got a half second of iframes you can spam, that ain't bad. So watch the health pool. That ain't bad. And combined with the defy and the rolling guard, you have pretty spammable iframes, and you just use the defy to be really specific on which targets you jump to. And you're practically immortal, so you'll rolling guard, jump in with your 1 after hitting them with your 3, so it'll be rolling guard, 3, 1. If there's anything left, you'll defy, recenter, or retarget, hit them with your 1. If anything is left, hit them with your 3, rolling guard, defy, whatever order you want to do it in. Obviously what makes sense. But the philosophy is to just stay invulnerable the entire time. It is very energy hungry, but you can use the Panzer because it's a slower playstyle. You're definitely taking advantage of the kill rate granted by your 3. But you can maintain energy if you have decent ammo economy. Sadly, I feel like you kind of need energize for this build. Once I got on the bicycle, everything was fine, but it did feel like I needed energize. So it's an option. Let's see. All right, a little bit more meta. This kind of depends on what type of heavy attack you're running. If you're running a dagger, don't use Arcane Strike. You probably have enough attack speed. You would either throw more base damage on, or Reaper, if you have it, for like a little bit of survivability, obviously at lower levels. Hell, even, what is it, Eruption, I found some use in. As you pick up health orbs, you're causing the AoE. Feels like Kullervo's a lot more safe. Especially when it allows you to focus down overguarded enemies a little more. Because at the higher levels, the damage reduction, you could be hitting for like hundreds of millions at the lower level. Like even like on like base level Steel Path where it's like 180, 190. But obviously as the enemies scale, they get more armor, they get more health, so you could be hitting for like 100 million, but after a bit you're hitting for like 10, And then you're hitting for like 2, and all of a sudden, like, you have to hit something twice, but it's an overguarded enemy, and it's basically just looking at you, and you die. So, strike is up to you. I like using strike. But if I'm using a dagger, I'm not using strike. You'll use fury. So it'd be something like this. This has felt pretty good. Again, steel charge is up to you. As like a general option, corrosive projection against Grenier would be my recommendation. This is a pretty generic build. So, corrosive projection, prime sure-footed, equilibrium flow, continuity is kind of optional. I highly recommend running double range. You can also tone back the fleeting expertise, or you could do streamline and get rid of continuity. And you could also do... I actually like blessing on him. It feels pretty good at the beginning, but also one of the bigger issues is if you're not running the Panzer for whatever reason. Blessing for quicker setups. Blessing counts as 50 free equilibrium charges. And just having that little bit of extra ammo economy, if for whatever reason you're not running the synth set, it feels pretty good running Energize and Blessing for the stack. So if you're doing like a quick exterminate or something, you can definitely feel it. So, Rolling Guard, it's a complete skill issue at this point. Whatever your go-to choice of strength is, if you really want to rely on health tanking for whatever reason, this build is more centered around killing stuff before it sees you. So, all about spamming the 3 and then the 1, occasionally hitting the 2. Like, you wouldn't even use the 4 on this. So, it is what it is. I think that's about it. Oh, let's talk about scaling the melee. I know... This is what I was using for Corrupted. Let's talk about a general one. We'll just change this one. I know people are running... the focus energy, and honestly I understand why, but if you're using his 4 at all, it's just a loss of, you know, raw damage, like modded damage. And condition overload is the preference. I've messed around with both of them. Obviously condition overload scales more. But if you're even using your secondary at all, just take like a compressor with encumber, and this will be fine. If you want to run the Fury setup, Fury prime pressure point feels so fucking good. Jesus Christ. But if you're using your 4 at all, I just don't feel like you need the heavy attack efficiency. And I have basically stopped using wind up on here, because if you use wind up, you reduce your iframes. And the timing, it isn't super complicated, but the timing of being able to dodge stuff does get significantly easier. So just by casting your 1, it's an instant cast on the iframes, that is. So it's an immediate cast. If you get, obviously if you're not listening to music or something like that when you play, this is pretty easy to get, you know, caught up with dodging stuff with. So it's just, it feels like taking out some nuance on the frame. But obviously if you're running enough range and enough power strength, to just fucking one-shot the tile and the next tile over. Obviously, you don't care about wind-up, because then it would literally... Or you don't care about using the wind-up iframes for, like, iframes. You just want to be able to kill more. So it's personal preference. If you want to go the whole glass cannon where it's literally just rolling guard keeping your ass alive, max range, strength, figure out the energy efficiency, throw on rolling guard, you know, and let Jesus take the wheel. But if you're using his for it all, you're going to have zero issues keeping your combo up, especially because of the 4 and the 2. You're going to have no issues keeping it up. So, it's up to you. The heavy attack efficiency is on my Riven, though. So, that's up to you. But, it is what it is. I hope this helps. Been playing him since he came out. Been having a pretty good time with him. Questions, comments, concerns, you guys know what to do. Anyway, thank you for watching my video. I hope this helped. Take it easy, guys.